No, I'm just.
Probably we do now, yes.
I'm just joking. So you mentioned the ecological benefits of removing elevated expressways. Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Well, the ecological benefits have been documented in the materials, and it's considered a preferred solution in the options that have been evaluated. Incidentally, I think there's been a lot of slander of the quality of the work that's been done, which has been done by extremely qualified engineers. It's been peer-reviewed by the world's best peer-reviewing engineering company. There's no doubt as to the quality of the work that's been done by the city, our own people, and Waterfront Toronto. I think it's slander that there's any questions about the qualitative and content of the work that's been done.
Okay, thank you. And so back to your slideshow. It really is, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I love those before and after pictures. Can you email them to all the councillors and the mayor?
Be happy to. I've sent out a not very good self-congratulatory black and white version. You have it. We'd be happy to give you.
If you could email it to all of us, that'd be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holyday.
Thank you for your deputation. Very informative. You've probably seen this chart right here that shows the transportation demands.
Yes.
And I'm just going to go down a path here. Let's just assume that this holds true, and that the modes for Otto and Gardiner remain constant. And let's assume that people are using those modes because they have to. So there's not flexibility to shift modes. If you had a magic wand, or we had a bottomless pit of money, how would you vision having the best way to move people, cars, through or across the city? You put a really exciting concept, which was to remove the complete elevated component of the Gardiner, but big picture, imaginary, if we could do it all over again, knowing that we've got the demands that we've got, what would be the best way to organize expressways, other ways to move cars?
Well, it may surprise you to know, I don't think that we're that far wrong. If we take the Gardiner, and it's unfortunate what's happened at the beyond the exhibition grounds on this side, because we have an elevated structure, and I think we probably are going to have that elevated structure more or less in perpetuity, because the alternative is a multi-billion-dollar underground system all the way from the X to York Street. So I don't think that one's going anywhere. The one before us today is the one that you know. The section which is which inevitably will be revisited by our wiser children is the section between York Street and the Jarvis, where there is this maximum contact required between the city and the waterfront. So it seems to me that the sections which are to the west of York Street, the sections that are to the north of Lakeshore, are natural and appropriate expressway delivery systems to the center of the city. And I don't expect those ones would ever go anywhere, because other cities have them. They have expressways that go to the city and then you go on a road. Rome has things like that. I think those are permanent pieces of apparatus. The problem is that we've changed our idea of the waterfront. Toronto's defined itself as a waterfront city. It's the most important public place without question, and there's no debate that expressway is condemning the city to a lesser life, both culturally and economically.
So if I heard you, it's the form, specifically the above ground form, versus the function of the expressway that's the issue at hand that you've...
Exactly.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mihevc. We're going to vary the order this time, but we can't do it every time. So Councillor Fletcher's also asked to speak.
I had another commitment, and I really apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you for your graciousness.
No, but we made a decision.
Mr. Kirkland, you're one of the wise owls of planning and city building, frankly, in North America. I'm wondering if you could speak to the issue of how to manage this conflict. Can you speak to the conflicts that other cities have had and how they've managed it through?
Well, frankly, you saw they didn't manage it well. I mean, if you take San Francisco and New York, the earliest, The bloody expressway has to fall down before people see that there's logic to the wisdom of the planners and transportation designers. Earthquake knocked down San Francisco. When those two things happened, everybody said, whoa, wait a minute, what happened to the traffic? And so other cities have subsequently adopted the position that I'm advocating for Toronto as a result of what's happened in the empirical evidence, as I call it, the thing we really could rely on rather than talking in statistics. What happens when you do this? I don't want to hear stories about, oh, well, that city is different than this city. All the cities have the same result. They all have redistribution of the transportation system. They all moderate themselves. They shift to transit dependency. They're all the same in that regard. They may have slightly different beginning points, but they all end up the same place. The cities that don't do that usually, frankly, can't afford to do it. Look at the list of cities that haven't done anything, and also what kind of culture prevails in those cities. Is it an urban, sophisticated culture which is interested in tourism, or is it something else? And I say it's something else, and they usually don't have the financial wherewithal to do anything about it.
So, like my experience even to date is I have my facts, they have their facts, someone else has their facts, and then you start talking, and you're really kind of talking like this.
Perfect. We need empirical evidence, not your opinion.
Okay, yeah. Okay, no, that's, I mean, but there's empirical evidence. I muster my empirical evidence, someone that musters up different data or evidence, and I'm wondering how to speak to across the Great Divide, if there's any lessons from other jurisdictions.
There are absolutely lessons from other jurisdictions, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of literature now on the surprise of the effects of the takedowns. Tourism increases, economic activity increases, the traffic is moderate, it doesn't decline because the traffic's going to be equal to the possibility of driving. And so it actually remains constant. And transit, there's no doubt about it, everyone knows investment in transit is mandatory, and that's where the money is spent.
So how do you speak to the Board of Trade? How do you speak to the, what was the other group, the downtown BIA?
Well, I would first of all invite them to go back and revisit the dispute about the east leg of the Gardiner, where we had exactly the same arguments. Some of you are too young, perhaps, to remember these arguments. They were exactly the same arguments. The expressway came down, and not a week after that, it was like it never happened. It was an amnesia, collective amnesia. What expressway? What happened here? I don't know. What dispute? I wasn't party to it. So the Board of Trade, maybe they're all, it's to say something nice, maybe they're all very young. I don't know.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. You've indicated that San Francisco, New York, Seoul, Madrid, Boston, Seattle have all removed expressways. Are you aware of any major cities that are building elevated expressways? Is that something?
That question was asked before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the answer was no in the Western world, some in China.
Oh, okay. So just using the waterfront lens, this is an EA, and looking at what the West Dawnlands Committee presented, the study goals in the environmental assessment are to revitalize the waterfront, reconnect the city with the lake, balance the modes of travel, achieve sustainability, and create value. If this is the environmental assessment, do you think that the hybrid model meets those goals in any significant way?
Well, we should be honest about what the hybrid model is. Hybrid model is the retained model up to the river, i.e. the important section, which has got to do with the relationship between the city and its waterfront, is unaffected. As a matter of fact, it's made worse because we build additional ramps, which are obstructions. The current situation couldn't be worse. I've heard an astonishing discussion about an 8-lane road and how hard it is to cross. Go down there and walk across there now. We have ramps. We have something which is twice as wide in some places as an 8-lane road down there, which seems to be okay. 8-lane road is University Avenue, and University Avenue with not very many intersections because there are only a certain number of cardinal axis streets that come to the waterfront, and they'll be easy to go across. There'll be signalized intersection. they'll be safe. The current situation with its ramps and widths and varying geometries is hideously dangerous. And so this discussion of safety is a joke. Couldn't be more unsafe what we have now.
But as a goal to revitalize the waterfront, you think it actually would impede that because you're introducing ramps actually right at Cherry or East Bayfront area?
Now, I think the ramp, as a matter of fact, the other thing is the ramp design in the so-called hybrid option, which is not a hybrid, the hybrid option is terrible. It goes across the pond at the foot of the Don River on the diagonal swoop. The one that's proposed in the alternative is carefully defining the geometry of that piece of water and creating a kind of gate to the waterfront. It's a very carefully considered piece, so that we should be clear. There is nothing, and I'm very interested to hear it from anyone, nothing from the river west, which is an improvement. It's only worse. And there is a situation to the east, which is more or less comparable. So the one landowner over there benefiting from all this, Great Gulf, gets the same, or First Gulf, gets the same condition as they would get in either alternative.
So no improvement to the west?
None.
Thank you.
It's worse.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis is next.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask again about the shift, this so-called hybrid model. It was not the model that we saw originally, and that what we went off supposedly to study, correct? The first version was along the railway corridor.
No.
So instead, this new so-called hybrid has put all those ramps in right along the edge of the waterfront.
And managed to landlock the land north of them still.
Right. So, in fact, it has essentially sterilized almost this whole section.
It's dreadful. Let's not
It's
mince
what?
words. It's dreadful.
Dreadful.
It's a dreadful proposal that no one should be interested in.
Could you tell us how you really feel?
Now, there have been, I think there were some inferences that the design solutions, we're going to go away and look at design solutions or alternatives to this dreadful new ramp structure. Are there really any other alternatives?
Now, the problem is, if you're retaining the expressway, which this is really a retain option with a fig leaf, if you're retaining the expressway, you have to connect to it. And once you have to connect to it, then it creates a kind of geometry of the connecting piece. And the geometry of the connecting piece is going to swoop over by Keating Channel and then nail into the expressway system and produce the terrible Keating Channel environmental situation that we've got, plus the swoopy geometry and the flying over the settlement pond and the ramps. Couldn't be worse.
Okay.
I think that was, oh, okay, Councillor Perruzza, sorry, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
I just want to pick your brain a little bit. You said that tunneling, for example, is just simply too outlandish and not affordable. So that's an option that you would completely rule out?
No, I think sometime in the future, when our descendants have recovered from retaining the Gardiner and finally taken it down, you could build probably for in 2015 dollars a $3 billion underground connection between the expressway at the X, which is in a kind of trough, underground somewhere around the Armory, diagonally across the open space, and come up. You'd have ramps up that would arrive at Spadina, possibly Bathurst, and then York Street. You could do one, but it's so expensive that it's unlikely that anybody has the stomach for it. And